Welcome back to the Transportal CFB podcast YouTube channel presented by NoContextCFB. We're here with our weekly offseason podcast episode coming to you every Wednesday as we look forward to the 2023 season. My name is Parker Gillam, and joining me today we have Kyron Samuels. Kyron, how you doing?
Doing pretty good, man. A long time listener, long time, patron. I'm watching and I'm keeping up with you guys and love everything you do. So first time being on here and I'm excited about it.
Sweet, awesome. Yeah, glad to know you're a fan. But yeah, so today we're touch a little bit on some of the top coordinators in college football and just kind of who's up and coming, maybe for a head coaching job in the future, and then run through some spring games for the weekend. Obviously, a lot went down in Boulder and in Tuscaloosa as well, and then also discussing a little bit about the new first down ruling from last week. No clock stoppages unless it's the last 2 minutes of each half. So definitely a major change there. But first, couple things just to note. Obviously, as we say every week, coming up July 5th, first ever edition of the Transportal CFB Preview Magazine. It's going to be a digital PDF sold for $9.99. We're going to have in-depth previews of every single FBS conference and team, over 20 player focus articles, 10 feature articles, and then obviously some classic preview content like Heisman watch lists, All-America teams, bowl projections, stuff all along those lines. Should be a lot of fun. I personally got a couple pieces in it that I'm really looking forward to everybody seeing. So definitely don't miss it. Should be on sale July 5th, and it's $9.99 again to download. And then don't forget to give us a like and subscribe here on YouTube. Leave a comment or a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And then also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Those can also be found in the description. And just thank you guys again for all of your support as we kind of continue to grow the team and the content for you guys. And yeah, let's get into it. Starting off with kind of the coordinator talk, I wanted to start off with one that recently fell from the head coaching ranks, but is on his way back up, and we'll see if he makes it back to a head coach. But Mr. Manny Diaz, now currently out at Penn State, defensive coordinator, well-established defensive mind through and through. I think everybody in the country respects him for what he's done at multiple different stops across the country. The head coaching position didn't really work out. So I guess my question with him, Kyron, is there a chance for him to go back in the head coaching ranks, or do you think he is just best suited as a defensive coordinator?
I think the answer to both of those questions is yes. I think he is a candidate to go back up one day and be a head football coach if that's what his heart desires. But I also do think he's just much better suited as a coordinator. He's a pretty good recruiter, but he's a dang good coach. I mean, you see when he's been a defensive coordinator, that's when he's had the most success in his coach career. And everybody's not a head coach. I think everybody probably has that dream. Most coaches have that dream, or most fans think if this guy's really good, then he has to be good as a head coach. And I just don't feel that way. I think he's a really, really, really good college defense coordinator, and that's probably where he's best suited. But like I said, if you continue to have top 10 defenses everywhere you go, so you continue to have these complex blitz packages that everybody mimics, and they want to show a lot of the same looks, people are going to start putting your name in those head coach conversations again. So it really depends on what Manny Diaz wants and how long he wants to be a coordinator, or if he wants to change places to go be a coordinator. I'm sure Penn State can pay him fairly well, but if an SEC school, an elite SEC school, if that comes knocking at his door, or maybe a USC, if they're really interested in, fixing that defense one day, they have the money, the resources to go get a guy like Manny Diaz. So it really just depends on what he wants to do going forward.
Yeah, because it is a pretty nice gig he's got at Penn State right now. You're going to have all the talent,
Sure.
all the resources you need. They've had multiple elite units these past couple of years, and it also makes me wonder. Seeing how Mario Cristobal's fared so far at Miami. Again, it was only 1 year, but you got to think, back to, was Diaz really the issue, or was it more of a Miami just program culture issue? Who knows? We'll kind of have to see how Cristobal progresses down the way. But another guy I wanted to point out, kind of a little bit more under the radar, that I've been a huge fan of for a while, Andy Ludwig over at Utah, offensive coordinator. It's not necessarily the flashiest offense, the most explosive, but it's creative. Defenses struggle to defend it. They use a lot of their personnel in unique ways. I look especially at how they use Dalton Kincaid these past couple of years, and just the ways that they got him the ball. Also, how they run Cam Rising has always been really effective. So I've always thought Ludwig one of the more kind of creative, cutting edge minds in college football. I would definitely kind of want to have him as my offensive coordinator if I was kind of picking some guys from that field. So yeah, he's another one I could see moving on from Utah pretty soon. I think especially with his scheme is just fairly different from what a lot of other people do. I think a lot of teams, especially in the SEC, Big Ten, where it's tough to crack some of those defenses, maybe they look at Ludwig. So yeah, what do you think? He's another guy that has potential to move on?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's a guy that has potential to move on, and like I said, it just depends on what he wants. These are guys that have proven to be commodities. Like they're really good at what they do. Like you talked about his ability to use the tight ends. I mean, before Kincaid really burst onto the scene, Kuthi was looking like he was going to be the guy that everybody was going to be talking about. He's going to be coming back this year, so I'm expecting him to have a huge year, similar to what Kincaid had this past season. So, and then they had 3 or 4 running backs. You had Tavion Thomas, Thompkins. You had a ton of guys there in the backfield that they found a way to get involved in the game. And like you mentioned, they also do a very good job of running Cam Rising and working into those design quarterback runs. So when you talk about balance, getting everybody involved in the offense, ball control, everything you want from an offense, honestly, he's done a very good job at establishing that. And they do it with not the greatest amount of talent. Utah's decent, right? I mean, they have a decent amount of talent. They found a way to be very, very solid, and they have hard-nosed guys, technicians, smart football players, and you can be just about anybody when you have that. But imagine what he could do if he had Alabama talent, Georgia talent, USC talent now, like if he had those Ohio State type talent. So I really like what he does and how balanced he is. And you don't see that a ton at the college level. Sometimes it's due to the talent disparity. You don't have a balanced roster, but a lot of times it's just due to, you go run and gun. You got these high power spread offenses. You got these elaborate schemes that, might yield you a couple points, but don't really it's not conducive to winning football, but he has a winning style of coaching, and I really like him. So I do think he's the guy that has a potential to move on to the upper ranks as a head coach one day.
Yeah, and still only 58 years old, so he's still got kind of a time ahead of him to maybe do one last push for a head coaching job. And then kind of the last guy I wanted to point out, just with the job that he's done at multiple different places, is Jim Knowles, currently at Ohio State, previously turned around Oklahoma State's defense, which seemed impossible for a long period of time with how they were playing and just the shootouts they would get into, but turned that into a really respectable unit. Was at Duke for a long period of time and led some pretty solid defenses there. And Ohio State defense had been holding them back for, before 2022, previous couple of years. And Knowles comes in, I believe they jumped like 30 spots in terms of points per game and yards allowed per game and everything. It was just across the board improvement. And Knowles just seems like a guy that you plug in anywhere, and he does well. And he's the kind of guy where defensive coordinator at Ohio State, there's not many places you go that's higher up than that in terms of pay and just prestige, especially if he wants to try to contend for a national title. So he's kind of one that I might look at as settling down at where he's at, especially with how much Ohio State likes him and just how they've been searching for kind of that defensive coordinator they can stick with for a while. So yeah, do you agree and think he's kind of going to stay put at Ohio State, or do you think someone else is going to come calling?
These are interesting names because these aren't like young guys, right? None of these guys we're talking about are young or haven't had a ton of experience and been able to go a bevy of places and succeed. So I really do think it's what these guys' hearts desire. Jim Knowles, I'm pretty sure he's been offered head coaching jobs this past coaching cycle. He'll be offered head coaching jobs in the coaching cycle to come. So it depends on what he wants. If he's able to, flesh out this contract and get maybe a big extension, or they make a national championship, win a national championship, and they have a Brent Venable situation where they're going to pay him $2.5–3 million to keep him on staff, I think you could see him potentially stay. But if the right job opens up, I think he's definitely a prime candidate. So I think he's worthy of it. I think he's earned it. It just depends on if he wants it. So heck of a job by him this past year. Even like I wrote about it before the playoff game against Georgia. I thought he did a great job the entire game, but I thought they just wore down towards the end of the game. But for 3.5–3 quarters, they played excellent football, had an excellent game plan, and he maximized the potential of that roster. I truly believe that because they didn't have the trenches to match up with Georgia. I don't even think they had the DBs. I mean, we saw that towards the end of the game. But to get the most that he got out of that unit for as long as he did was really, really commendable, and I think he did a really great job. So excited for Jim. I think Ohio State fans should be excited because going forward, you're going to see more of that.
Yeah, and I agree. I think it was more of just the personnel at Ohio State on defense has not been there in recent years. Like, and you're not seeing the Bosa brothers out there anymore, or Chase Young out there anymore. So they're having to catch up a little bit with that. And you saw that in the Michigan game in the trenches. They just couldn't. I mean, Edwards was bursting for 70 yards every other play, it seemed like. Right. So I think they potentially more than likely will be even better this year, which I think is a good sign for Ohio State fans for sure. But yeah, do you have any coordinators that you definitely want to point out, Kyron?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I have to shout out Ryan Grubb at Washington. What he's done up there, I think, is just really, really remarkable. And I think outside of Ohio State, because we have to give them their proper respect, right? Washington has the best core of receivers in the country with Odunze, McMillan. I mean, they have some really, really good depth of talent there. And I think they're only going to be better this year. So I think that Ryan Grubb deserves a lot of credit. I know he got interviewed by Alabama. That was a real chance that he was going to be the Alabama offensive coordinator, and that didn't work out. But I really like everything that he does. I mean, you can't talk about coordinators offensively, at least without talking about Garrett Riley. I think what he did at TCU was pretty remarkable because I don't think they had a ton of top end talent. I think they had a solid quarterback. I mean, he wasn't even the starter going into the season. So you have a guy like Max Duggan who burst onto the scene, but you had Quentin Johnston, and you had a decent running back, and you had Steve Avila on the offensive line. But other than that, I think the other six starters weren't very good. I'm just going to be honest. And I think he maximized the talent on that team in a way I hadn't seen in a while. And it's just, we couldn't expect this from Riley coordinators, right? And it's the leach system. It's the leach tree. It's the same type of stuff. So we come to really expect that, but you still got to do it on game day. And I think he does a great job of calling games and managing games. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does at Clemson. And we'll probably talk about that a little bit later when we get to the spring games. But I really like what I see from Garrett Riley if we're talking about offense. And if we're going to go defense, I don't know if are we going to split it in half or.
Yeah. You take it wherever. Yeah.
Okay, so I really, really, really love Glenn Schumann and what he does. I know they're branded as co-defensive coordinators with Will Muschamp, but Shu is he's the brainchild of that thing up there. What he's done, taking the Saban scheme, because it's Nick Saban's scheme. Let's not make any mistakes about it. And Pruitt has his take on him when he was at Tennessee. Kirby had his take on him when he was at Georgia. Muschamp, all these guys have their version of it, the little stuff that they do. But what Glenn Schumann has done, and this is a whole different conversation. I could do a whole podcast about this guy, but what he's done is he's simplified the terminology. He's slowed this like massive system down and made it so simple to communicate that Georgia is able to do whatever they want on the field. So whatever you do offensively, they have a counter for it, they have a name for it, and they're able to communicate that. They know it's just what he's done to simplify what some consider a very complex scheme, and it is. For college kids, it's amazing. So I give him a ton of credit for what he's done in Georgia. I think he's the difference. Personnel-wise, they've always had talent in Georgia. You know what I mean? Kirby has always been a very good coach. Coach Saban's always been a very good coach. But you could tell when somebody puts their imprint on the defense, and I could tell what Glenn Schumann has done up there. And like I said, I think the biggest proponent of that is simplifying stuff. If you could take something so massive and complex and make it simple, and then you have those guys, those type of forces running it, you see the result we've gotten the last 2 seasons. And that's why he was one of the most valued commodities in this coaching cycle, and he will continue to be going forward. So I have to give a huge shout out to Glenn Schumann, man. And one last guy that I wanted to shout out that and this is not like necessarily a guy that I'm like praising, but I just want to see where he goes, is Alex Grinch, the defensive coordinator at USC. I'm very interested to see what that defense looks like this year. The talent isn't going to be an issue anymore. They've literally revamped the entire defensive line. They have 4 transfers. They have Georgia kid, Barry Alexander coming in. They have a bevy of talent. I'm hearing that they could be acquiring some more really, really good back-end talent through the portal here soon. So there is no excuse for him anymore and for USC anymore. That defense should take significant strides this year. And if it doesn't, I'll be really interested to see, if it's a mid-season firing, if it's an after-season firing, or how they go about it, or if he takes it up another notch and they end up being a very, very good defense. So not necessarily giving them a lot of praise and lauding them, but what I am is really excited to see what that USC defense looks like this year. So I was definitely on Alex Grinch there in USC.
Yeah, because it does seem like it's interesting you mentioned a potential midseason firing, because it does seem like, this is a season that USC is going to be going playoff or bust, and it's not going to be, unless something unforeseen happens, it will not be the offense's fault if they do not make it. So, yeah, and with the talent they brought in, you also look at the secondary, Christian Roland Wallace out of Arizona. USC poached multiple guys from that Arizona team. That was really that was rough to see. But yeah, as you said, the talent is there. I think Grinch, I don't know. I'm with you to where the jury's still out on if he is a good coordinator or not, because you've seen flashes and he did some good things with Oklahoma, but the overall product wasn't what they wanted it to be. So yeah, I'm a little wary if I'm a USC fan, but I on paper they should be much better than last year, for sure. And then your point on Schumann, I think, was really good about how he simplified the scheme. I think what's so great about that is when you have the freak athletes and talent that Georgia does have, to be able to simplify that and be able to, give them easy reads, easy assignments to where they can just go use their athleticism and make plays. That's a major part of the reason why they've been able to be so successful. When you're able to let guys like Nolan Smith just play so free and so easy. So yeah, I think he's a guy that his name is not really thrown around enough really at all nowadays. You rarely hear people talking about him, but he's one of the because I do feel like everybody, and I wonder the defensive coordinators, Georgia, how they think about it. Everybody's always like, "Oh, it's Kirby's defense. Kirby has his hands all over it. It's
Yeah,
all Kirby's." I
which
don't.
he
At the
does.
end of the
I get
day,
it. Yes, I got to
yeah,
give him a little bit of credit, but if you pay like if you know the nuances and the ins and outs of the defense, you can tell you know when because Alabama's had this problem the last couple of years. It's too complex, it's too much. You see, like they have all the talent in the world on the defense, but when they have bad plays, it's miscommunication. It's not guys who's getting beat. It's just simple. It's really hard to relay all these messages and be on the same page with the linebackers and the defense. So when you take all that and then reduce it and make it to where these guys aren't thinking, and you got Nolan Smiths and Jalen Carters and Chris Smiths in the backfield, like we have those guys not thinking and just going out there and playing football. It says the world about what you can do as a coach. And he has a clinic about it, and I think he talks about it somewhere available online. And I would urge people to go watch and kind of learn about it. But man, it's really important, impressive what he's been able to do with that talent.
yeah, yeah, for sure. But yeah, moving on, we'll kind of get into some of the spring games from this past weekend. I think most notable, at least from everything that's happened during and after, is the Colorado spring game. On the pro side, you saw their biggest attendance ever at a spring game. A lot of big plays, players, playing really, really well. Fan base seemed to respond. But then you had an influx. I believe the number is now up to 18 transfers since the spring game on Saturday. You've seen a lot of stuff on social media going around about the culture and Dion, forcing people out. And, his son made a remark at one of the wide receivers that left. And I mean, I'm just interested to see from your perspective. I mean, even like a player's perspective during this time. I mean, what would be going through your head? How do you respond to such an overhaul that is so? I mean, Dion is committed to it, and it's happening, and it's so controversial. May not be the right word, but kind of along those lines. So, what? Yeah, what as a player would you be kind of feeling in this time?
I would say controversial is the right word. Even if it shouldn't be, it is. I mean, this is what
Yeah,
people have. They've taken it and ran with it, and that's due to who Dion is. I mean, let's make no mistakes about it. Uh, but as a player, if I was a guy in that locker room, um, I would appreciate the honesty. If you've been a part of any teams, and this is not like at a lower level, I'm talking about college, professional level, your livelihood's at stake. Like this isn't just a game. Like I know a lot of people just view it as just a football game, or oh, they're just kids. No, this is people's livelihoods and futures that are being affected here. And I respect the fact that he came in on one of the first meetings and said things are about to be changed. This was in December, right after the bowl game. He came in and said everything's about to change. He said, if you guys want to hop in the portal, hop in the portal. He was very honest and upright, and I kind of don't understand why it's being rehashed here at this point because this is what we probably should have expected because this is what he said and this is what you are going to expect when the portal's wide open. I think the portal is the bigger conversation here, but people just don't want to have that. They're using Dion as the the catalyst for that conversation. They get to put a face with it now, kind of put somebody to blame with it a little bit. But I think what Dion's doing is fine. I think a lot of people are talking about. They're saying that Colorado's going to be bad or you can't win this way with this massive overhaul. And I'm like, did you guys watch the team play last year? They went 1-11 and had one of the worst P5 teams ever. Like it can't get any worse than what they put on the
yeah,
field last year. And the massive overhaul is probably what's necessary. Is it unconventional? Absolutely. Is it something that we haven't seen a ton of at this rate? Absolutely. But this is what the portal affords you. We've actually seen teams rebuild through the transfer portal. Look at what University of Washington was able to do last year. Look at what Oregon was able to do by reloading their team and not having to have a fall off by going to get a Bo Nix type and going to get some of the Bucky Irvin, some of the guys that they were able to go get and transfer and keep their team at the level that they were. Look at USC able to rebuild their team, go from 4-8 to an outside shot. I mean, they're a couple plays away, maybe a Caleb Williams injury away from being in the playoffs last year. So the portal allows for you to revamp your team in a quick amount of time. So people are talking about the unconventional nature of it, but they have the #1 recruiting class in the transfer portal. So they're going to add some more guys here soon in the summer. They have a lot of young guys that are coming in this summer that they end up building up. I think they end up having a top 30 class, if I'm not mistaken,
yeah,
in the college football recruiting in 2 weeks. He turned a team that didn't have much of any momentum recruiting into a top 30 team. So when you look at the guys that they're bringing in, when you're looking at the guys that they're getting from the portal, I would be humble and respect. I would respect it as a player if I thought that I needed to leave. Right? If I was a guy in Colorado and I need to leave, you're being honest with me. You're telling me I probably don't have that much of a chance, or maybe I'm not quite good enough to play on this level. Cool. I can go somewhere else. I can take my chances elsewhere. on the other hand, it's like the guys like I forget the receiver's name, but he's a pretty good kid. He had a 98-yard touchdown in the spring game. Um, I can't remember his name. You might be able to help me out and pull
I'll
it up.
look it
But
up real quick. Yeah.
a guy like him getting a huge opportunity on the stage like that to go showcase his talent, and then he enters the portal. I also understand that. Like if you're a senior, he's an older guy. He doesn't want to necessarily be a part of a rebuild. If they aren't going to be that good, he's like, hey, this has amplified my profile. I'm a little bit better than this situation may be going forward. I only have a year to maximize my ability. Also have zero problem and totally understand a kid like that entering the transfer portal. So I don't think there's a bad thing happening here in Colorado. I think everything is happening the way it should. There's going to be massive turnover. And like I said, when you're starting from a 1-11 platform, there's nothing you could do to make that worse, man. Everything from here on out is about rebuilding, going forward, and making it better. So I'm okay with everything that's happened. And now it's just on Dion to show and prove. You got a 3-year window. Yeah, people probably give you a little bit bail the first year. You're going to get some flack either way. I mean, you're Deion Sanders. All the stuff that you do to get kids there is the same reason people are going to hate on you. So you got to take the good with the bad, but you got a 3-year window. And I think this is just the first year of the process. And we'll be monitoring these guys closely. So I'm super excited about it.
Yeah. Yeah, the receiver, and I hope I don't butcher his name, but Montana Lamonius Cragg. He had 3 catches, two touchdowns. I believe it was 194 yards, something like that. But he was one of 18. But yeah, I mean, to your point, I mean, this is just the reality of college football these days. This is what the landscape is. You have these mass player exoduses. And I think for me at least, and we're not in that locker room or anything like that, but I do think it was more that, with these amount of players leaving right after the spring game, it was kind of a, hey, end of spring ball is going to be our deadline. We're going to let you know by the end if you're going to have a place in the fall or not. And if not, we're going to let you get out of here. And I feel like that is more than likely what happened. And just the amount all at the same time kind of has drawn some headlines. But I mean, yeah, I think Dion, first off, I mean, he's made Colorado cool again, which it hasn't. Nobody's respected Colorado football for a very long time, to kind of put it simply. But yeah, so I think there's that in the recruiting. I mean, nobody else would be able to pull these athletes to Boulder like he has. So I think if you're a Colorado fan, you have to be excited. It is results-based business, as you said. And unfortunately, this first season schedule, I mean, your opening 5 games are at TCU, rivalry game versus Nebraska at home, rivalry game versus Colorado State, at Oregon versus USC. 1-4 does not look out of the realm of possibility. And if that happens, the media is going to be all over Dion. Why did you let all these players transfer? Is this not working? But again, 3-year window, I think, is exactly right. I think for a big rebuild like this, you look at, year 1, set the foundation. Year 2, bowl games the goal. Year 3, let's start contending. And you just build from there.
Coincidentally, that's also the timeline for his young quarterback son. So it'd be interesting to see if they do turn this. Let's say they win 6 games this year, win 8 games next year. Then, they have another 8-9 win season in year 3. I wouldn't be shocked if you see him get a call up to go to a big-time SEC or Big 12 program. So the 3-year window is not only just about building the program back, but it could be a scenario where this is just the window for his Colorado tenure in general.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one thing. I mean, you also got Travis Hunter on the other side of the ball. I mean, who's going to be, he might be playing both ways. Who knows, honestly, at this point, with them losing some of those receivers. So we'll have to see. But yeah, they're going to be an interesting one to follow out throughout this season. I anticipate their games being, regardless of if they're winning or losing, they're going to be fun to watch. They're going to be a very entertaining and fun team. So yeah, definitely looking forward to that. I think they'll bring a little bit more, hopefully when the Pac-12 has lost all of its respect in the last couple of years, from what it seems, they will hopefully bring some more attention out to the West Coast, and that'll in turn help out the Colorado or the Oregons, USCs, Washingtons, etc. But yeah, kind of moving a little bit past Colorado. Alabama quarterback situation. Spring game was this weekend. There were some ups and downs. Milroe outplayed Ty Simpson, still threw 2 interceptions, I believe. And then Simpson had some mistakes of his own. Saban afterwards going on to say that the quarterbacks need to get the fundamentals down, that they're still far way off from being polished. So yeah, how do you kind of evaluate that Alabama kind of quarterback controversy? Seems like Milroe has the edge right now, but Simpson might have the better upside. So how do you think that ends up playing out?
Well, as a lifelong Alabama fan, watching this thing be at the top and then fall down and come back to the top again, I would just say, listen, this is just a natural cycle for Alabama quarterbacks and Alabama football. So we have a quarterback controversy again. We haven't had one of these since 2016 when we had Hurts and Blake Barnett. and all those guys here. So it's just back to the basics for Alabama, and I think that's why you saw a guy like Tommy Rees come in as offensive coordinator. That wasn't the first choice. We have to be honest about that. There was, very blatantly other guys that were in front of him. But I think when you talk about a guy that's really still getting his footing, but shown a lot of promise, I think he runs a very balanced offense. And I think the biggest thing I took away from that was the receivers got open. The tight ends were very, very good. The offensive line was very good. The running backs are going to be incredible. You don't have to be Bryce Young. Like, you don't have to be, Matt Jones. You don't have to be Jalen Hurts. You don't have to be Tua. So I think that's the biggest thing I want to keep in mind here is that we've been spoiled the last 8 years, and that it's not always going to be like that. That's arguably the greatest college quarterback run ever. And I just want to say that to Alabama fans, keep that in mind. Probably never going to happen again. The fact that it happened this time was just absolutely unprecedented and insane. So keep that in mind. You won national championships with Greg McElroy. You won national championships with Jacob Coker. You won a national championship, even though I think he's a tier above those two I just named, with AJ McCarron. You won 2 with that guy. So you can do it. I mean, look at Georgia just won with Stetson Bennett. I mean, we can go down the list. You don't have to have a top 5 pick at quarterback, a first round type guy quarterback to be successful. So I wanted to preface that with what I'm going to say about these guys. I just don't think they're very good right now, which is okay. They've only had a month to work with Tommy Rees. This is their first time being the guy. Ty Simpson and Jalen Milroe, they're both competing. They're both being heralded as the guy right now. So I do think Milroe has a little bit of an advantage just because of what he brings on the feet. He's able to run the ball very effectively, and he's just a freak athlete. But I do like what I saw from the team overall. The team looks really, I mean, I didn't even talk about the defense, but Kevin still has those guys flying around, and he looks like he's bringing the old Bama mentality back and more aggressive. I mean, I haven't seen them tackle that well in a long time. I know it's a spring game, but those guys are out there playing hard, and the linebackers were, I'm talking about getting into guys, and we're seeing the safeties coming down. If I thought Malachi Moore and Caleb Downs had a great game. So I know it's a quarterback question, but I think all that matters when we're talking about it, because they're not any of the guys that I just named. They're not any of the guys on that quarterback run. And I think the most important thing for people to realize is that they don't have to be. So be patient with them. They're going to lean on the run game. Understand what the rest of the team looks like, because the rest of the team looks really incredible. And just kind of take it from there. I mean, temper the expectations, reduce all expectations, and you're not going to be disappointed, because they're decent players. There could be really good football players down the line, but they're not that right now, and it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and you do also got to think about how, Bama fans have also been spoiled. I mean, you had Tua come in as a freshman, and he just looked so polished and perfect. And now they're thinking, oh, why don't all of our new quarterbacks come in and look like that immediately? It's not realistic. But yeah, I like your point about how the defense seems to be changing. This is a year in which, because it seems in years past with the great quarterbacks they've had, the defense has kind of weaned off, and there puts a little bit more pressure on those quarterbacks to, go undefeated, and, it's more on the offense's shoulders. So maybe this is a year in which it trends back to, early 2010s Bama, where it's defensive, run first. You got Milroe and that stable of backs in the backfield, and they're just read option, speed option all day, just going around all the defenses. And, maybe that's the solution. I think that could work. The only thing is, with the wide receiver talent that's out there, you do need to utilize that in some way and have at least respectable passing attack. So, but yeah, you still got a full off season, all of fall camp still to go. Tommy Rees is gonna work with them over the summer. So I think the concerns, as they always are with anything in the Bama program, the concerns are a little bit overemphasized, and definitely not nearly as bad as we think. One of those two is going to step out there on day one. They're going to have an elite team around them, and they're going to be all right. And Texas will come to town in week 2, I believe, and they'll probably hang 40 on them, and then we'll be putting Jalen Milroe in the Heisman conversation. So we'll see. Maybe that's the reality. As a Bama fan, I assume that's what you hope the reality is. Yeah.
I hope they run the ball 35 times a game. Get back to the old stuff. And coming out of the game, I was just super excited about the tight ends. I mean, they got the tight ends involved early, so just get back to that. Ball control. Don't turn the ball over. Control the clock, and you can win national championships doing that. We've seen it time and time again. So I think everybody just take a step back, Alabama fans, and breathe. Everything will be okay.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. Elsewhere as well, Clemson spring game happened this weekend. You touched a little bit on Garrett Riley earlier on. A lot is going to be looked at Cade Klubnik this year. There's a lot of pressure on some people saying this as a quote unquote make or break year for Dabo, just in terms of, can he stay in that upper echelon of elite teams, or are they going to fall back down to, a middling 9-10 win program each season? Clemson obviously hasn't nearly hit the portal as hard as most other schools, and they've kind of stayed a little bit more old school in that regard. So, kind of your thoughts coming out of what we saw from the game, from Riley's offense, and kind of Cade in general as well.
Oh, well, I really like Cade a lot. I think Cade's going to be a very good quarterback. I think people should probably temper the expectations on great quarterback. Trevor Lawrence, Deshaun Watson, those type quarterbacks that they've been used to having. Uh, Probably relax your expectations a little bit, but I think he's going to be electric, man. I think they have a little bit better talent around him this year. I think the offensive line is going to be a little bit improved. But with Garrett Riley, I think he's going to get a little bit more out of that offense and the system and how it runs. And it's like you said, a middling 9-10 win team. And I just don't think there's a such thing, but that's how people view it, right? Like, I mean, that's literally how people view it. Winning 10 games is hard, man. Like, I know Clemson doesn't have the toughest schedule. The ACC is not the toughest conference, but winning 10 games a year is incredibly hard. And he's done it 13 years in a row. I think Coach Saban broke the record last year. I think the Alabama has 15 10-plus win seasons in a row, which broke Bobby Bowden's record at 14. But Dabo is right behind that. So it's like it's an incredible run that they've had in terms of just being a very good football team. And I think that's about the expectation is what they should be this year. Probably 11-2, high end 12-1, maybe get into a playoff game, win the ACC championship. It's kind of my expectation for them. But I think the offense is going to be electric. And I think the fact that they aren't in the toughest conference and they're not going to play the most difficult football games all throughout the year is going to be beneficial to let some of these young guys get in and really develop. And offensively, I think they're going to have plenty of time to work out the kinks. And Kate's going to have a really spectacular season. But defensively, what I saw, man, I think they're going to be one of the better defenses in the country this year. Really, really love what I saw. And they have, in my opinion, the best player in this past high school recruiting cycle, and Peter Woods at defensive line. I mean, listen, the kid he's 18 years old. He should be at prom right now. But I believe he had 8 or 9 tackles. He had a sack and a half. I think really it was 2 sacks, but they button up the quarterback. They're not really hitting the quarterback. So I gave him 2 sacks, and he had a batted down kick. I mean, he passed so many flash plays. Even the plays that he didn't make. He had one where he's chasing Cade Klubman. Cade Klubman was trying to get in and run and go score, and Peter Woods at 310 pounds tracking him down sideline to sideline. It's like I haven't seen a kid like that in a very long time. So I think he could be one of the better defensive linemen in the country, period, this year, regardless of freshman or not. And I think he's going to be one of those Jalen Carter, Quinnen Williams types. When we look down the line in 2 or 3 years, he's going to be a top 5 to 7 pick. I truly believe he's going to be that good. And I think they have some other guys on the defense that I'm really excited about. They have some really good young DBs. Toriano Pride, he's another really good corner. Like they have a lot of really, really good depth at defensive back. So I think that's going to help the offense in turn. They're going to get the offense the ball out. You're going to create a lot of turnovers. You're going to create a lot of favorable positions for your offense. And I think Clemson's going to be, I don't want to say a sleeper team because they're going to be preseason top 10. Everybody's going to pick them to win the ACC, all that good stuff, right? But, or maybe, maybe not. Florida State's getting a lot of hype this year. So maybe they have some competition. But saying all that to say, I think Clemson's going to be right back in the playoff picture this year. They're going to be right back at 10, 11, 12 wins. And I think Garrett and Cade Klubman are going to do some great things there. So really excited about Clemson. A lot more excited than I was going into the spring game watching it.
Yeah, and I do think Dabo, and I think that program is loving all that hype that Florida State is getting and how they're kind of the darlings of the ACC now.
Yep.
So many people ranking them above Clemson, but also picking them to beat them this year. And I think Dabo and them are just loving that, someone else believes that they can run the ACC, but they're going to be very eager to keep their crown. But yeah, you mentioned the freshman defensive lineman. I mean, obviously Woods, he tied for the team lead with 6 tackles, 5 of which were solo, but it seems like, there's been a lot of talk about those early enrollees, and they are, it seems like that next crop of Christian Wilkins, Dexter Lawrence, Cleveland Farrell, those guys. You had TJ Parker had 3 tackles and a sack as well, true freshmen, Stephylon Green. All those guys contributed and filled the stat sheet that day. All as true freshmen, early enrollees that, who knows? I mean, if they start an entire true freshman defensive line, that'd be insane, but they're probably good enough to do it. So it would not surprise me. But yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to see. I think Cade is solidified. He's still going to have some growing to do this year, but I think he has solidified himself as a good quarterback, at least at this point. And you've got the team around him to where there's, again, no excuse to not be within a game of the ACC title game. It's going to come down to that Florida State matchup, which, unless mistaken, is in Tallahassee this year, which will be interesting to see how that plays out. But yeah, we'll have to see. I think it's, a lot of people are talking about, is Dabo kind of, he's fallen behind in the transfer portal at NIL? Is he kind of on his way out? Does he need to move on somewhere else? I feel like this is a year in which he silences a lot of the critics from the past 2 years, and definitely kind of gets Clemson back into the main sphere of things. But yeah, moving on to a couple other quick ones. Nebraska had their spring game this weekend. Another great showing from their fan base, obviously. Matt Rule's first game, first walk through that tunnel and everything. Biggest storyline from that was Georgia Tech transfer Jeff Sims. His performance in that game, I believe it was over 190 yards passing. I think he only had 3 or 4 incompletions, 2 touchdowns, also flashed the legs for sure, and seemed to outperform Casey Thompson, the former Texas transfer in this game. So a lot being made about Sims, a big guy that has 6'4", 220. He's got a lot of talent. He showed that, he's capable of doing some great things at Georgia Tech, just obviously did not have the personnel around him to really have much success. But yeah, I mean, are your thoughts on maybe Sims taking that job away from Thompson and kind of the outlook for Nebraska if that does happen?
I think it's a really, really intriguing prospect because Nebraska is not a bad football team. I know they've had some tough luck the last couple of years, but they've been a very, very competitive football team. And I think it's interesting because I thought Thompson was one of the guys that was probably off limits, if we're being honest. I thought that he was a guy that was going to have the job clearly going forward. He seems like a perfect fit for Matt Rule in that style of offense. So I was a little bit surprised to see them even bring him in. So the fact that they brought him in led me to believe that, maybe he might be the guy. They really believe he's the guy that could be the, starter going forward. So, and I don't think that he would come if he thought he was going to be the backup either. So very interesting prospect here. And I think that going forward, you can expect Nebraska to be even more competitive. I think Matt Rule is a really good college coach. I think he's more suited for this level of football. He's done great things recruiting wise already. I know they've had Dylan Rail, his dad is on the staff, and they had that kid there. And if they end up, being able to get a kid like that, we won't even be talking about the quarterback position next year. He'll be the starter going forward. So I think they're in a really good place. If you're a Nebraska fan, you have to be very excited about the future prospects of the program. And I think going forward, they're going to be fine. So I expect them to get back to 7, 8 wins fairly soon, and then really start to put the foot on the gas in the recruiting aspect. And hopefully, with the next 5, 6 years, be back in the top of the food chain if we're talking about college football powerhouses, because I don't think this new era of college football fans or even young kids really remember just how prominent Nebraska was. I mean, they were the Alabama, the Ohio State level program for a very long time in the 80s and in the early 90s. So it'd be interesting to see if they can, kind of get back to the old black shirts defense and a lot of high scoring offenses. And I think it'd be good for college football because that fan base deserves it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it is good for college football for Nebraska to be back. I think, the fan base primarily, for me, that was before my kind of time of paying attention to the sport was when they were dominant. And, it's so foreign to me to think about, Bama not being relevant or something like that.
Right.
It's kind of that same kind of deal. So, yeah. And the point about them being competitive, 5 games were single possession games last season for them. Right. It seems like it's been that. Part of me does feel bad for Scott Frost because it seemed like that was every season he was at the helm. They were losing close games, couldn't get over that hump. So they're only a couple plays away at the end of the day. You also bring back a 900-yard rusher and Anthony Grant to pair with Sims in the backfield. And there's talent all over the field with Nebraska, and the fan sport's going to be there. So, I think year one, you look at potentially a bowl game. You got it's the Big Ten West, so that division's wide open every single year, and you could essentially win it entering every season, no matter who you are. Just ask Northwestern. So yeah, I think Nebraska. I think Rule's the right hire. I think he's going to end up being a really good option. And I think that Sims is going to end up winning this job just based off of it. At least starting day one, we'll see if he makes mistakes in the passing game and stuff like that. They might have to move on from him and go to the more conservative option in Casey Thompson. But yeah, I think Rule is going to end up being a great hire for them. I think he's a program builder is what he's known by. I think he's going to set a good foundation this year. And Nebraska is going to be able to build off of that. But yeah, moving on, just as we get ready to kind of wrap up the show, we want to talk about new first down ruling on college football next season. A fairly big change. The clock will not stop on first downs unless it is the last 2 minutes of each half, which is in an effort to speed up the game. As you're seeing across sports, MLB attempted to speed up their game this year. Basketball's done it a little bit as well. An attempt to speed up the game. A lot of people pointing out, Is it to get more commercial breaks and stuff like that? Was it more of a money thing? There's a lot of that being thrown around. So just kind of what are your thoughts on the change? What potential negative, positive impacts do you see? And did you think that college football was also too long to start with, the games were?
You know, it's a very interesting conversation, and I really understand both sides of the arguments here. But my argument is more from a purist standpoint. It's like leave college football, man. Like, first of all, it's like I understand like the game changer with the NIL stuff, the portal stuff, but like the purity of the game, man. It's like we love college football for what it is. And think about all the great, crazy endings we've gotten because of the first down. When you don't have any timeouts and you're able to move the ball down the field and get in scoring range, or get down there, then you have heartbreak. I mean, we've seen so many crazy endings because of that. It's just like I would hate to lose that about the game. But I also do understand kind of moving the game forward and progressing a little bit faster and kind of making it more suited to the NFL game. It's like I understand both sides of the argument. Like people talk about the game being too long, but that's never been a problem for me. Like I have no problem sitting an extra 30 minutes with my beer or my whiskey or my tequila, whatever I'm drinking that day, and having some nice food and watching football and tweeting about it. Like I love that. So a 3 hour game never bothered me at all. But I do understand for some people it could drag a little bit, but personally, that's never been an issue. So I really couldn't care about that. But I think what is going to be interesting about it is you're going to have to see college football coaches manage time a little bit better. And we haven't seen that from a lot of coaches. Um, and I think that's going to be interesting to see how coaches manage timeouts, how the offense changes, how if the defense is able to adjust their personnel a little bit more because teams aren't going as fast. And, there's going to be a lot of things that could possibly change, negative or positively. But what I do think is the biggest statement to be made here is that nothing's going to change on the bottom line. So I had a friend that's he shout out to my guy Harrison Tenzer. He worked at Florida, Oklahoma, but he was like, now we have a saying, we call it Kirby statement. Excuse me, Coach Kirby's death march. Like they go on these 4.5, 5 minute drives and just end football games. He's like, people think stuff like that's going to change, and he's like, no, it's going to go from a 4.5 minute, 5 minute death march to an 8.5, 9 minute death march because now the game's just going to go by so much faster. So I do think that's going to be the overarching theme here is that nothing's really going to change too much. You're just going to adapt a little bit and it'll be the same product at the end of the day because the coaches are the coaches, the talent is the talent. At the end of the day, that's what's going to reign supreme. It always has, it always will. So it's an interesting thing to talk about, but at the end of the day, I don't think a whole bunch is going to change and college football will be fine.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to relate again to the MLB, I mean, pitch clock has come in and, there were some early complaints about it, but it's really seemed to everybody's adjusting. It's been fine, and I agree. I don't think the impacts at the end of the day are going to be that huge. I do agree with you that probably the two big things are going to be timeouts and the usage of them. And just, our coach is going to start using timeouts earlier in the quarters, stuff along those lines. And then also as you were pointing out, just kind of, when teams are running those 4 minute drills kind of towards the end of games or end of halves, how are defenses going to respond? Are you going to have to start using timeouts earlier and then wait until that under 2 minute time when the first downs actually count? Because you can't rely on first downs to stop your clock anymore. Right. The same thing on the offensive side. I mean, usually offense, it's usually a 2 minute drill at that point, so it doesn't really matter. Right. But even if they're trying to go quickly, 4 minutes left, there's going to be minor adjustments, and that's why, I mean, you would imagine most staffs and players and coaches are meeting this offseason and definitely discussing, all right, what are the potential, pitfalls we might come across in the game that we haven't thought about, and we need to be kind of prepared for that. And I feel like it's something with how statistics are these days and how all these coaches have these, charts and everything to predict when to call timeouts, when to go for two, whatever. I think people will adjust and it'll be fine. I don't think it's going to end up being an end all be all, but it is kind of a greater issue that you kind of pointed out on how college football is going through so much rapid change in these past, 3 to 4 years. Our head coach in Missouri, Eli Drinkwitz, he said something in a press conference that, really has stuck with me since. It was about 2 years ago. He said, I love all these changes. I think these are all great changes for the sport, but I think they're all happening way too quickly and all at the same time to where there's going to be such a just gray area period where there's, people are figuring stuff out, finding loopholes, taking advantage of stuff. And it's going to be probably still even 3 or 4 years from now until people really get a good grasp and guidelines on NIL and transfer portal. And, obviously realignments coming in as well. And that's going to be a whole nother beast. So I do not necessarily worry about the health of the sport, but I do I do wonder on how it is going to change in these coming years and if we're still going to, fully recognize the sport that we had prior. And I think they're good changes, and I think we'll figure it out eventually. It's just there's going to be some bumps in the road till we get there. And, you hear coaches complaining about a lot of the tampering and stuff like that. That's the stuff you don't want to hear about. So, but yeah, looping it back to the first down thing, I don't think that's nearly as big of a deal as it is made out to be overall. But yeah, does it have any, is there any possible effect maybe on a player when you're on the field if maybe get a first down and usually the clock stops, you can take a break, maybe you're having to go quicker now, or do you think with players it's honestly not going to be that much of a difference?
Well, it depends on the style of offense you run for one. So that's going to be the biggest thing. But also, I think it's just coaching. This is where it comes into play. The teams that deal with this change the best are going to be the most successful teams. If you're being coached to do the proper things, you're going to have that clock in your head. Like, hey, when I get tackled, listen, I don't have a first down. I don't have time to walk back to the huddle, celebrate, do all that stuff. Like, no, we got to get back now. So those are the things that should be being hammered into your head in the summer and fall camp. So when you get to when you get to September, when it's time to play football and you're tired as hell, it's the first 3 games and you ain't really thinking straight. It should be hammered into your head by then. So I think the teams that have the most mature teams and have the better coaching, those are going to be the teams that adjust. And I don't think it's going to be that big of a difference for you as a player if you're being coached well.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a perfect point. At the end of the day, coaches will prepare you for everything. The coaches that are best handling, to relate it back down NIL and transfer portal, the ones that are best handling that are kind of the most successful right now. So, I think that's definitely.
Last point though, I do think the teams that run the football well, the Penn States, the Alabamas, the Georgias, those are going to be the teams that benefit from this the most because you run the football, you bleed all the clock, don't turn the football over. This is why, going back to the Alabama point with the quarterbacks, it might not matter as much going forward. Like, we're being honest, the game's going to be so much shorter. So the teams that can run the football well, control the clock, and not turn the football over, those are the teams that are going to benefit from this the most because the games are going to be so much shorter. And the teams that don't have that great of defenses, this is going to be much harder on them because you don't have so much time to come back. You're not going to be able to make up those deficits like you used to be. So I think that's going to be the biggest shift here.
Maybe it does support the trend of kind of teams. A lot of teams across the country are leaning away from the super up tempo, blur speed, spread offenses. Because it kind of hit that peak in early mid 2010s when you had the Baylor's, TCU's, West Virginia's really spearheading that. It seems like teams are going a little bit more, at least more balanced nowadays with some more creative play calling, and I think maybe this rule change, it does kind of support that trend down the line. But yeah, I think that'll about wrap it up for us today. Thank you guys, everyone, for listening, watching. Once again, if you like the show, give us a like, subscribe, follow, 5-star review, all that good stuff, and leave a comment below or on Twitter. We'd love to hear from you guys and kind of your thoughts. Some of your top coordinators potentially that you think are due for a next job. Again, one last reminder: the first ever Transfer Portal CFB magazine coming out July 5th, $9.99, previewing the 2023 season. And thank you, Kyron, for joining me. I've got do you want to shout out kind of any stuff you've been working on recently or anything you've got coming up?
Nah, not really, man. Just follow me on Twitter. That's where you get all my crap at. That's why I put everything. I have a link tree and I'm always tweeting my stuff out. But I just want to say thank you again for allowing me on the platform. And shout out to my guy Liam. Shout out to my guy Mark. And Mark, man, you gotta next time we get on, we gotta have Mark back on here so we can talk some stuff. It was too formal this time, so we gotta get some crap talk here. But I really enjoyed it, and I'll be happy to be back on one day. So I appreciate you too, man.
Yeah, man. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Mark makes it fun. I've done one before with him as well. But yeah. Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody. This has been the Transportal CFB podcast, presented by NoContextCFB. We'll be back again next Wednesday, as always, for the off-season podcast, and we'll see you guys then.